Acha, I'm keeping my video off because here also its storm is going on, so there might be a problem in network. Okay. Okay. Today in this session, we will discuss about disaster management and hazard mapping. So before I start, I should welcome you all in my session. Okay. Before I start, let me tell you a glance of what we will discuss today. First, we will discuss what is disaster management. Then we'll go for nature characteristics and phases of disaster. Then we will talk a bit about risk, vulnerability, and their assessment. Then we'll go for the phases of disaster management. And finally, we'll talk about hazard and disaster mapping. Because maybe for this last week, you are learning a lot about this disaster management. But this mapping techniques is very important for preparing any disaster management program. If you can't predict the impact and the consequences of hazards, then you couldn't do anything, and these mapping techniques will help you in doing that. Okay, so these are very important. So before entering into disaster management, let me tell you a brief of hazard and disaster. I know you all know all these things. You have learned these things a lot, but let me tell you a brief. Okay. So the hazards, what we consider in general, that something that goes beyond the carrying capacity of nature, and any object or incident or event which have a potential to cause harm to the environment, we consider them as hazard. And when any hazard can cause loss of human as well as animal life and also human resources, then we consider them as disaster. That you all know. I'm not going in details. And if you classify the hazards, I think you have already learned these things. So we can broadly classify them in three categories. Then we can subcategorize them. So again, I'm not going in detail of it. So wherever you go, you will get natural hazards, you will get quasi-natural hazard, and you will get this man-made hazard. Even if you have heard this Egra incident, which is going on here now, that also a completely man-made hazard, right? So these things are very important. And before that, we have to classify what kind of hazard is that. Now I'm directly entering into the disaster management thing. So what is disaster management? So simply, as I told you earlier, that the disaster means loss, loss of human life or loss of human resources. And being a human body, being a rational person, we always try to reduce such losses, right? So for that, we prepare some plan or strategy or any kind of steps, actions we have taken to reduce the risk of hazard. So any such organization who do that, we call them as disaster management. So all the organizations, all the institute who plan, who act for just to reduce the loss of disaster risk, we call them disaster management. Okay. Now we're coming to the objective of disaster management. So when we are preparing, we are creating an institution, it should have some objective, right? So what kind of objective are they? The first thing what we have to know that is identification of danger. Because if you don't know what kind of danger you are going to pass, then you couldn't do anything. Because if you have marches in your hand, and if you don't know what kind of threat it is, then you will obviously get danger. So first thing is to identify the danger. So it is a marches, it have the potential to ignite fire, that we have to understand. So this is very important. First, to identify the danger, what kind of threat are there. Then to prevent safety. So if you see some child is holding a match, so what you will do? You will definitely turn to him and you will take it back, because you know that child don't know about the threat, and it is your duty to save the child. So again, in case of disaster management, those organization first see who are at the verge of risk. They first save them, then what they will do, they will spread the awareness, because once a disaster happens, it is not possible to go to every person who are under under the risk of this disaster and to save them. So what we can do, first we can save the extreme persons who are at the verge of the danger, and the rest of the people, we can make them aware, see that that kind of danger is coming, you have to be safe from that thing, you have to do these things, or you shouldn't you shouldn't do these things, that you have to tell to the people. So that's awareness is very much important. What else? Next is assessment of loss. So what kind of loss? We know that in any disaster there will be some loss. We can't control the loss completely, right? So what we can do after any disaster, if we can assess the laws, what are the mandatory laws, what are the laws which we can control at least. So if we can categorize the losses, then maybe in future event we can reduce this thing. So loss assessment is very important. Next is maintaining connectivity. So we all know that in case of any hazard, any disaster, the prime thing is to reach to the people who are in danger, right? If you go for rescue, if you are taking relief, first we have to reach the place. If you couldn't reach the place, you can't help them. So this connectivity is very much important, because if the road is blocked, if the road is damaged, then you didn't go there, your rescue will be delayed, and those people who are suffering from that hazard will be in great danger. So that road blockage or interconnectivity, you have to maintain it properly. The next thing is mass protest. So what is that? Sometime in case of quasi natural or man-made hazards, we know that gonna happen. So if we are installing any chemical industry, so we know what are the pros, what are the cons, right? So if it's not good for the environment, so a single person or a single organization cannot hold that thing for a long time, because there might be some political pressure, there might be some industrial pressure, so that cannot be held by a single organization. So if we can aware the people, if we can create a mass protest, then we can actually we can actually close that thing. And you have seen that thing in case of chipko movement, how they have protect their environment, right? So these things is also a part or objective of the disaster management team. Next, obviously, the initiation of rehabilitation, uh, because we all know that after disaster, people are in get loss, they are in suffering. So most of the people don't have the capacity to rebuild their things, right? They might have lose their house, they might have lose their economic activities. So they need some support from, maybe from the government, maybe from some other private organization. If we can help them monetarily or psychologically or emotionally, they can revive from that situation, right? And they can rebuild, they can reproduce their thing again. So that rehabilitation is very much needed. Okay. And finally, that thing is infrastructural development. Okay. So if you see, before 1999, there was no such thing called storm shelter in India, because we were not aware about those things. Storm happened earlier also, but we, okay, if it happened, we will take these people away and we will help them. We thought in that way. But when that 1999 super cyclone occurred in Odisha, huge number of people died, huge number of people got affected, and that time Odisha government realized that we need some places which will be safe, which will be safe to keep these people away from those kind of disaster. And from that point of view, government of Odisha start constructing these storm shelters, and then throughout India we can found thousands storm shelter, permanent storm shelters. There are some temporary storm shelter as well. So this kind of thing uh, are comes from the disaster management concept. Okay, so infrastructural development. So these are very important objective of the disaster management. Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now I'm coming to the principle of disaster management. So what are the main motto? Why we are doing these things? So I have already told you that obviously in case of disaster management, the first and foremost thing to reduce the loss of human life. This is the utmost thing for a disaster management group. So they will reduce the casualties first, and then whatever they will see whether they can prevent the further casualties. Because if you are saving some people, but if you let them free to do whatever they want to do, they will they will again fall in danger, because that time they are completely break down, they are emotionally got damaged. So you have to take them uh, through proper medication, through proper support. So that also very important. Once you save them, you have to save them and you have to take care of them for a long period of time. Okay. Next is capacity building. So where you can see there are huge hazards, huge disasters going on. So that first thing is what we can do. Yes, we can rescue, we can rehabilitate. All these things are okay. But if we can make capacity among the local dwellers, that will be more fruitful than rescuing these people. So this capacity building among the local people, among the local dwellers, it's very important. Next is preparedness to deal with any disaster. Obviously, if there is a disaster, if a disaster is coming up, first we need to prepare what we're gonna do, right? If obviously if it's a very quick disaster, we can't do anything except to rescue and relief. But if we know that disaster gonna happen, we can plan accordingly. We can plan during the pre-disaster period, and we can take strategy to reduce such loss. Okay. Next is obviously response, because if a disaster occurs, the disaster management team should go immediately over that place. They should rescue immediately. If they delay, if a disaster management team got delay to reach over there, obviously there will be a huge loss of life. So immediate rescue is very much important. Okay. And for that sometimes we can see there are in India there are some disaster management team from navy, from army. They used to do all these things for us. Okay. Next is evacuation, rescue, medical care, and relief. I have already told you that, because whenever they are in danger, they need these things. They need to support. They need this kind of support just to get up from that danger, from that hazard, from the risk. And finally, rehabilitation and reconstructions. Because once something got damaged, people need some monetary help, economical help to rebuild their things. Okay, like they might have damaged house, they might have damaged shops, so that need reconstruction, and for from reconstruction purpose, they need some money. So that most of the disaster management group provide. In our government also, they provide monetary help, and they provide material help. Okay. In every disaster, we had this kind of facilities. So this is also very important. Now we are coming to the key element of disaster management. So what are these? How to detect a disaster and how to find out the impact of disaster. Because if you can't understand how much risk is there, how much impact the disaster can possess, you can't do anything, you can't plan accordingly, right? So for that we need some parameters. By assessing those parameters, we can actually find out what kind of impact will be there and how to act for those impact. So those elements are: first is impact of to identify the impact of hazards, then to identify the factors that affect the hazards, and to identify the characteristics of hazards, and find out the phases of disaster or hazards. we all know the in case of phases, you have, I think you have already learned there are three phases. That is pre-disaster phase, mid-disaster phase, and post-disaster phase. Right. So in India, there are actually plan accordingly. We have strategic planning according the phase, because sometimes we found disaster which are single phases. Single phases means we only can do post disaster management, like an earthquake. So, in case of earthquake, we only have this post-disaster facilities. We can't do any pre-disaster planning. We can't do any mid-disaster planning. We only can do post-disaster planning. So, this is called single-phase disaster. Sometimes we can go for mid disaster phase and post disaster phase. Okay, because maybe there were some sudden landslides. So during landslide we can aware the people, and after this landslide we can rehabit and reconstruct these things. So this, if we go for two phases, so it's called two-phase disaster. Okay, and if we have enough time to predict the disaster, then what will be the impact, what will be the duration of the disaster. If we have the extra enough time, then we can go for pre-disaster planning, mid-disaster planning, and post-disaster planning. So those things, if we have all, then we call three phases disaster. Okay, so if it's a single phase disaster, we plan accordingly. If it's a two phases disaster, then also the plan will be different. And if it's a three phases disaster, we plan separately. Right. So before planning, you have to understand what kind of impact a disaster can possess. Right. So how to estimate or how to assess this impact? So I think you can see a stair here. So I'm giving you an example. So can you tell me this whether this stair can be a hazard or not? Do you have any idea whether this stair can consider as a hazard or not? Anyone? Okay. I'm taking. Okay. Apparently, it doesn't look like hazard, but it is a hazard because it has a potential to harm our people. Right? You can get fall down while you are climbing on this. So obviously, this is a hazard. So how to find out its impact? So when we consider impact of hazard, we simply multiply the intensity of the hazard into the frequency of hazard occurrence. That means if you are climbing the stairs for 10 times, how many times you will fall down. So that's called frequency. And what is intensity? If you get fall down, how much harm you will get. So you might get some scratches and wounds. You might get some broken bones. Some maximum you can go get a brain hemorrhage. So that called intensity. How much harm you are getting affected. So if you multiply these two things, you will get hazard. Okay. So again, if I'll ask you, tell me what will be the frequency of this kind of hazards? If you are climbing up these stairs for 10 times, how many times if you can fall? So maybe some people say, maybe ma'am, maybe hardly one time. But some people say, no, no, ma'am, their chance of falling down for three times. So how to understand these things? For that, we have to understand. Hello?
Excuse me,
Yes?
how to quantify intensity? Can you please tell me?
Intensity. Yeah, that was I
Yes.
am saying. See the how much harm a hazard can cause. If you like, if you're falling down these stairs, and if you have only some wounds and scratches, so that you can consider as very low intensity. You doesn't got much herbs, but maybe sometimes if it's a very steep stairs, then if you get fall down, then you might get some bones broken. Okay, so then you consider it as a moderate intensity. And if you sometime if it I'm considering it as a maybe it's a rock wall or rock stairs, maybe along a mountain or along a cliff, and if you fall down from that, you might have a brain hemorrhage. So based on that, then it will consider as high intensity. Okay, so based on that, based on how much harm or how much wound you are getting, we'll consider the intensity. Obviously, we couldn't quantify this thing, but we will qualify that. That is, whether it's a low, whether it's moderate, or whether it's high or very high. Okay,
Okay.
yeah. So there was a confusion on frequency. Okay, or again on internet, how much frequency was there? If you are climbing on the stairs, how much intensity of how much frequency can be there? How many times you will get fall? Maybe she will say, I will get fall one time, and another person will, no, I will get fall for three times. So how to understand this thing? How many frequency will be there? So that depends on some factors. What kind of factors? If I'm saying, see, there are some situations. Okay, stairs is there. Stairs remain fixed. But situation is getting changing. Maybe you are climbing the stairs during daytime. So you will there is very low chance of falling down from the stairs. And if you are climbing these stairs during night time without a presence of light, will it be the same? You will say no, because there will be high chances of falling down because you couldn't see the stairs properly. Again, I'm giving you another example. Maybe there is a very high rainfall going on, and there is a splash of water on the stairs. So whether the chances will same or it will vary. Obviously, it will vary. It will create more risk. It will create more chances of getting fall. Again, if there is a splash of oil, someone is carrying oil in his hand and he might splash it on the stairs, again it will create more possibilities of getting fall down. See, hazard remain same, but some surrounding environment or surrounding situation is integrating the consequences or integrating the frequency of hazards. So those things, those factors, surrounding factors, which aggravate the impact or the frequency of hazards, that we call as vulnerability. That is very important. Okay, so I told you about the day and light thing and the rainfall thing. So those comes under physical factors, physical vulnerability. And sometimes I told you about the oil splash or any chemical splash. So those comes under chemical vulnerability. Okay, so that things remains around any hazards. So in a community or in a society, if a hazard occur or a disaster occur, it obviously varies along the society, because some society is very much vulnerable in case of maybe how to say, uh, like some societies are quite aware about any hazards. They will be less vulnerable. They know what to do that. But simply let me tell you an example. If an earthquake occur immediately, what you will do? You will rush down haphazardly. You don't know what to do. But if you go to Japan, if you go to any primary school, and if you ask the students, all the children, if what to do during an hazard, during an earthquake, they will say, no, we will not run haphazardly. We will first, we will try to get in under any table or any solid constructions. If it's not there, we will make a line. We will try to evacuate through that line. We will not run haphazardly. So that thing that out the situation which we don't. So these are considered as social factors. Okay, we are at that time will be more social vulnerable than those Japanese children. Okay, again, economic vulnerability is important, because if we are developing country, we have very less economical things, we have less infrastructure, we have less property. So obviously that make us vulnerable. So if a earthquake occur here, most of like maybe earthquake of 7 magnitude occur in all Kolkata, maybe 80% of our building will collapse. But if it occur in Japan, they have very high technology, they have very high infrastructure. So obviously maybe 20% of their building will collapse. So that also affect the disaster. Right, same things happening, but due to some vulnerabilities issues, we are having different results. The vulnerability factor is very important. Next, I am coming to the risk factor. What is risk? Risk is nothing but the human inability to cope up with a particular situation. Okay, so what it is actually a psychological thing whether you can deal with a problem or not. Suppose I am telling you like I don't know whether you stayed in Birbhum or not. Maybe some people from Darjeeling. If I tell them, see a flood gonna occur in your area and it will make your area inundated for 3 days. So they will shout. They will say, no, 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 no. That's not gonna happen. We can't deal with these things. How to deal with with such inundation? What to do? How to eat? How to go? They will panic, right? Because they haven't seen such hazard in their lifetime. If they haven't seen such flood for 3 days inundation or 4 days inundation. They have seen flash floods, but they didn't experience a flood like us. But if you ask a Ghatal people, those who lives in West Medinipore, for they will say 3 day inundation. It's not even a flood. What you are saying? It's normally a heavy rainfall. It's only a heavy downpour when we got 3 days inundation. It will automatically drain out. No need to worry because they are quite habituated of floods and all, so they won't mind for 3 days inundation. So that called capability. So those persons from the Ghatal or the West Medinipur district, they are much more capable of dealing flood than Darjeeling people. Okay, so these things considered as risk, and again, if you can understand, this risk can vary along with age because we have seen during Corona, all the child and old aged people are most risky to Corona than the younger people, right? Then immunization, you might have seen that those who are working on field, okay, daily laborers, cultivators, they got affected by Corona quite less than us because they are more immune to environment, they are more immune to any kind of viruses. So these things actually uh, uh, this is always affect the disasters, right? Obviously degree of mobility, how much mobile you are. Okay, again, emotional stability. If you are more emotionally disturbed, then you will be affected more. And if you are emotionally more powerful, more strong, you will get affected less. So that things obviously affect the disaster management, disaster impact. Okay, so again, if you just quantify the risk factor, so simply if you just multiply the hazard means the impact of hazard with vulnerability, then you will get risk. Okay, so I have already told you the impact of hazard, how to identify, how to assess these things, and vulnerability. That also we have to assess what kind of physical vulnerabilities are there, what kind of biological vulnerabilities are there. We have to assess those things, and after assessing these two things, if we just multiply these two things, we will get the risk factor. So let me show you one example. So a, a person is standing beside a road and he might be planning to cross the road. Okay. So the first thing what will come in your mind, what is risk? So the thing is first for getting a risk, we need a hazard, right? So I'm putting one hazard here, and hazard is a bicycle. So what kind of risk you can get? You can get hit by the cycle, right? While you are crossing the road, you can get hit. So that's the risk. Now, how to assess the or how to estimate the risk? So let me give you some case study. So in case one, so we can see one bicycle in every 10 minutes. So we can see along the road there is only one bicycle is passing every 10 minutes. Now, first here we have to identify the impact of hazards. What will be the intensity? You can see, if you got hit by a cycle, it won't harm you much. So obviously intensity will be low. What is the frequency? I told you, there is one cycle every 10 minutes. So again, obviously the frequency is low. And the vulnerability of what you are thinking. Okay, if it's a cycle, I can go pass through. Even if it get hit me, I will get maximum scratches and wound. It won't bother me. You are thinking in a way. So what you will do? Okay, so don't worry. I will not see. You will just maybe unknowingly, unawarenessly, you will cross the road. You will not think anything. You will cross the road immediately. So here you can see the risk is quite low because intensity and frequency and vulnerability both are low. So obviously the risk of such hazard is low. Now, in case two, there might be more bicycles. There might be adequate bicycles coming from both directions. So here what you can see, again intensity is low, vulnerability is low, but the frequency is high. So if you multiply these three, obviously you will get a moderate risk. So what you will think? Okay, see, although these are bicycles, so that cannot harm me more, but as they are they are so many, they can hit me. There are adequate chance to getting hit by the cycle. So here you are thinking, okay, there might be a chance. So what you will do, you will see both sides, you will see for a while, and then sincerely you will cross the road. So you can see here the risk is moderate. Again, I am coming to a third case. In a third case, there is only one truck, no cycle, only one truck that coming after 10 minutes. So obviously you can see intensity. Obviously if you get hit by the truck, you can even die. So intensity is high, but the frequency is low because only one truck every 10 minutes. And obviously the vulnerability, you will say, okay, although it's a truck, but it's only one truck and coming in a low speed, okay, I can pass through. Okay, so while you are multiplying these things, obviously you will have a moderate risk. Again, you will see how far that truck is, and you will cross the road. You will not think for much. It's quite far, I can easily cross the road, it's okay. But in case four, if it's a heavy truck, okay, and all these trucks are going in all directions in varying speed, then what you will do? Again, here you can see intensity is high, frequency is high, and vulnerability is high. So what you will think? Oh my God, so many trucks. If I try to cross the road, I will obviously get hit. So once you thought that thing, you will see your legs are getting scrambled. Your legs are getting they are shaking. You couldn't cross the road. Oh, it's very dangerous. I will not cross the road. So now you can see the risk is quite high, and now you are getting more vulnerable because your psychological factors are working against you, and you will say, no, 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 it's very danger. I will avoid this road. Okay, so this is the way how to calculate risk. Is it clear?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Now we're coming to the characteristics of disaster. Because if you don't understand the characteristics, you can't predict the impact, and you couldn't predict the risk of disaster. Okay. So obviously, what are the characteristics? The first thing is predictability. If you can predict a disaster, obviously you can control it to a greater extent, like a flood. So we can predict there gonna be a flood because there are gonna be a heavy downpour for maybe 4 days or 5 days or 6 days. And if that occur, obviously we have a very gentle slope that couldn't pass that water in a shorter period, and there will be a chance of flooding. That if you can predict that thing, obviously you can plan accordingly. So see, initially that area got will get inundated, so we have to rescue these people. We have to send maybe some medicines on relief to this kind of people. And maybe if you just make these people aware about those things, they will get past through it. So this planning can be done if we have predicted the hazards. But if it's a earthquake, no one still can predict the earthquake, right? So obviously we can't plan properly. We only can do what can do. We can only rescue the people. We can help them with relief. We can rehabilitate them. Only that thing we can do. But we can't uh, change or we can reduce the loss. Okay, if we can't predict the disaster. Again, the next thing is controllability. It's again related with predictability. So if we can control our thing, suppose again a flood. So what earlier we used to think that if we create dam, if we create barrage, we can control flood. So if when we thought that way, we start planning all those barrage, all those dams and all. Initially our plan was to reduce the flood risk, but then we found it as an adverse effect. We got it adversely, but still we started planning those dams for controlling the flood. Now we can control drought. So there are so many places in Rajasthan where people are doing agroforestry. They are doing culturing over there. Okay, xerophyte culturing over there to reduce the impact of drought, and they got success in a greater way. Okay, there are so many places where they have artificially created oases. Okay, and in that way they can store the groundwater level and they have reduced the impact of droughts. So that controllability is very much important. Next is speed of onset. That means if a disaster occur very rapidly, then we can't do anything. Like a landslide, it might occur within an hour. So that time we can't help much. We only can say, okay, this landslide gonna occur. You should avoid this road. Okay, so this much awareness we can provide, nothing else. But as you have seen during cyclone, we got you used to get 7 to 8 days time before it got initiated, and before its landfall, we have a 6 or 7 days time period. So on that time period, we can actually track the path. We can measure the maximum wind speed. We can measure the maximum impact and can act accordingly. So if we can measure the speed of any hazard, how much it will take time, so obviously we can reduce the impact. Again, the length of forewarning. So if we got a high length for forewarning, then we can make it better. If we don't have that length, obviously the loss will be borne. Okay. Next, the duration of impact. So if a hazard is occurring for a long period, obviously it will impact more than a short period hazards. Okay. And finally, the scope and intensity of impact. So that you have to understand that if a cyclone occur, which areas will be get more affected, which areas will get partial affected, and which areas will get less affected. So that you have to demarcate, and if you can demarcate these things, so obviously that will reduce your cost. So nowadays, I don't know whether you have learned it or not, because during Amphan, our government of West Bengal had produced relief and some monetary support to to the people who get damage during Amphan. But if you see in reality, there are there are maybe 20 or 35% people who live in city like Tomluk, like Nandakumar. Those people got that relief money. They didn't have any damage in their home, they don't have a agricultural land, but they got that relief. So this is a waste of money, right? So if we can predict the area, if we can have the scope to find out the intensity, find out the impacted area, then it will obviously give more result and it will cost less amount. So these are very important. Now we're coming to the phases of disaster management. So as I was telling you that while you are planning for reducing the risk, you need some phases. And here you can see broadly in case of disaster management, we can categorize this phase into four categories. First is the preparedness, second is response, third is recovery, and finally mitigation. Right? This preparedness, we mainly do this preparedness or we start preparing during pre-disaster phase. Okay. So what kind of preparedness we can do? So first we can plan for what gonna if once we have identified a hazard or disaster that's gonna happen, so we can plan what kind of plan we can do. So what kind of things we will be needed. Suppose if there is a cyclone, so first we need a monitoring. So this monitoring, how to do that, that we can plan. Then what we can do, we have to see where it gonna fall. So find out the area, demarcate the location, demarcate the area. Then what to do? We have to aware those people who are located in that area. We have to maybe rehabilitate them to a local storm shelter. That we can do. So those things comes under prepared. Okay. Even if you might have seen, there are some rehearsal. Those for navy, from army, all the disaster management cell, what they do, they rehearse with a mock drill. What is that? If a hazard occurs, what we gonna do? If a fire break out, then what to do? They do a rehearsal. So see, if there is even the fireworkers also they do that rehearsal. It's called mock drill. Why they do that? If it make them more prepared. If certain disaster occurs, they will say what to do. They don't know. They will get confused. So for that, they start doing training. So once a fire occur, you see, you have to take a ladder. You have to go to that place. You have to take that hose pipe. Then you have to climb up the ladder. You have to see how much fire is there. All this training comes under monk. So they keep on rehearsing those things. Okay, they how to distribute those relief, how to distribute all those medical things. If it's a flood area, how to distribute a thing. If you fall down from a, if you fail all those, if it this medical things, foods and water from a helicopter, it can go down in water. So how to drop it properly? That also need a rehearsal. So these things comes under preparedness. Again, the warning system. You have seen like 15 days prior to that Muka cyclone, we had the forecast that they are going to be a cyclone, right? And if you see all the model, 80% of the model was showing it was going towards Myanmar. So from the very beginning, we had the idea that there was a cyclone which gonna hit Myanmar and Bangladesh. So we have started preparing in that way. Although our government say we are preparing all with all relief, we have collected relief and all the necessary things. We have already distributed that things, but that was not needed because we know there are only 10% chance of getting affected by that mocha. But still, you can consider it as I don't know what you can consider it. I'm not criticizing government, but they knew that Mukha didn't hit us, but still they start doing all this weirdness. So this is actually waste of money and time. So these things are actually you have to think, you have to take into considerations. So you have to find out the exact places where it's gonna happen. You have to act accordingly, right? Next, I'm coming to the second phase that is called response. So, how you are responding to the disaster, that means how quick you are working, you are commuting, you are sending your relief to the disaster affected areas. Okay, again, what you can do, you can send your rescue party, you can send your search party, and what you can do, you can give a continuous warning system to them. Okay, what else you can do for in case of response, as I told you earlier that like Orissa government have created some permanent storm shelter along the coastal zone. So that also comes under response. How you can do these things? Okay, so this all come under response. I'm not going in details. Next is recovery. So we all know that after disaster there are damage, there are broken houses, broken bridge, damage of roads, so many things. So that needed a speedy recovery, because if there is a block of road, then the rescue team or the emergency relief will not be available there. So see, you need to do a prompt recovery if there is a damage of road. If you go to any hilly part, okay, just few days back, a week back, there was a huge landslide in Lachen. I don't know whether you are aware or not. There is a huge landslide of Lachen, and you know this is a tourist time, right? So more than 500 tourists got affected by this Lachen. They got stuck over there, and if you know, Lachen is a very small town, so they couldn't accommodate so many tourists. So if you go there, the PWD and the border road organization, they do a prompt recovery. They immediately after the earthquake, they immediately started removing the material. So within 6 or 7 hours, they cleared the road and they create an alternative road. Although that's a very small road, but they have created an alternative road through which they passes all the tourists. So this is called a prompt recovery. Okay, you have to go for an alternative things, and if you need, you have to take care of all the broken houses, all the broken bridge, what will be needed. And as I told you, during Amphan, so many people got relief, they got fund. So if it's needed, we have to provide them fund, we have to provide them grant. Okay, we have our organization. This is called Department of Revenue for Agriculture and Commerce. Okay, we have our organization like that is a government organization, central government organization, and it was built in 1871. And what they do, uh, their main motto was to send grants to those small holded agriculture or farmers who got affected by the hazard. So we have such schemes. Okay. So what is needed, we have to just take care of. And obviously, we have to send medical team. There are so many people who got damaged, who got affected. So they need medical facilities and counseling. So that comes under recovery. Finally, the mitigation thing. So we know that we couldn't completely reduce the impact, but we can minimize those things. Okay. So how to minimize these things? Just by assessing the impact of the hazards. So once you can see there was a hazard, and you can see how much area got affected. So what we will do, we'll mark the zone. See, these are the very prone zones, the damage prone zone. These are less damage prone zones. If we can start coding or zoning that such region, that will help in our future hazards. So once if there is another hazard, we can act accordingly. Okay, these are the very high prone zone. First, we have to change these places. We have to remove those people, or we have to create some law. Like if you go to Darjeeling, you can see there are so many high-rise buildings, but that is not good, you know. And you can see you might heard about the Joshi Mart. So Joshi Mart is collapsing because it was actually a landslide residue, and it was a stored landslide residue, and over this landslide residue, the town had formed, and they didn't listen to anyone. They didn't care about the law. They created high-rise buildings. They created so many industries, dams, so all these things, and obviously the result is Yoshimoto is collapsing. So that thing is very much needed. We need law. If it's a very high degree slope, we will restrict people to create to construct building over there. We will act. We'll take some laws and act to prevent them. So that comes under mitigation. Okay. And if you just say don't do that, they will not understand. You have to make them learn. See, if you do that, this is gonna happen. So if you do in such a way, they will not create any nuisance. But if you just hold them, don't do, they will create that nuisance. They will go illegally. So that public awareness, public education also very important, which comes under mitigation. Okay, so I know these things are very much theoretical. I'm not going in details. Okay, so these are the all phases of disaster management, right? And this is a disaster management strategy plan. You will get it everywhere. Okay, this is the most common plan. I have also downloaded it from internet. So how to mitigate, how to reduce the risk of hazards. This is a complete plan. You can see the thing. Okay. Now I'm coming to my second part of discussion, that is disaster management mapping. Okay, as I told you, this comes under preparedness, because that we run during pre-disaster management or pre-disaster phase. And as I told you, that you have to identify the impact, you have to identify the intensity, and you have to identify the area which got affected by the hazards. So if you couldn't identify such things, you can't help to reduce the risk. So for that, mapping technique is inevitable. You can't go without mapping. So what is mapping? This simply means to demarcate the risk or hazard in a particular location. What I was saying, what is hazard mapping? So this is simply a map that can uh, demarcate the risk of any disaster. What kind of disaster? Any kind of disaster. You can consider as a flood. You can consider tsunami. You can consider volcanic eruptions. You can consider even sedimentations. Any kind of disaster you may say can be demarcated and can be identified through this mapping. Okay, so hazard mapping is nothing just to display the risk of hazard through graphical or through mapping technique, right? So while you are drawing a map, you are mapping a disaster. What will be the characteristics? The major characteristics are: first, you have to be a subject, or you have to draw a subject oriented map. That means what you are drawing, you have to be very particular. Maybe you are drawing earthquake map, earthquake hazards. So you have to be particular about the earthquake parameters. You couldn't mix it with rain, with flood, or you couldn't mix it with sedimentation or anything else. Okay, if you are drawing a earthquake hazards, you have to be particular about the parameters of earthquake. Okay. Next, so hazard can be hazard mainly represent the risk. That means whether the area comes under high risk, or a medium risk, or a low risk. Okay. So this basically show the area where you will get high risk zone, low risk zone, and medium risk zone. Because if I'm saying you, see, in case of earthquake, Howrah, Purba, Medinipore, this comes under zone 2, and maybe Darjeeling, Sikkim, the Gangtok, those zones comes under zone 4. So this might not help you in this, because you can't visualize this thing. But here, map help you to visualize, right? So that way, it may help you to serve better. Again, this kind of map can be of single dimensional. It can be of 2D. It can be of 3D, and it can be represented through color, through shade, and also through isotope. Okay. And one more important thing is, this kind of map should be regionalized. It cannot be for a whole area, but overall area. You have to be very much localized. You have to make the demarcation of region very willingly, and it should be a time oriented. It cannot be forever. It's not a like administrative map. It will remain for a long time. So for a particular time period, that map will be valid. Okay. So why we draw this kind of map? what are the need of drawing this kind of map? Obviously, it show you the accurate location of the hazards, where it's gonna happen, where it's affecting. So this thing you can get accurately from a map. Then, obviously, through a map, you can identify the intensity of hazards. As I told you, that high intensity zone, moderate intensity zone, low intensity zone, that is very much important. Okay, and the thing is like how even we can assess the damage of hazard by creating zonation. Okay, so if an earthquake occurred, so earthquake occur in a particular point, right? But you can show you that so this is the earthquake epicenter, but this area maybe 4 kilometer diameter area got extremely damaged. That the further 10 kilometer diameter area, you might see they are heavily damaged. Then another 50 kilometer area, they are moderately damaged. So these zonations will you can show through maps only, right? So this is very much helpful. Again, you can show the hazard risk, how, and you can go for management or reducing the risk accordingly. And also, warning system, forecast system can be done through mapping. You have seen all the cyclonic map; those are actually forecast map, right? So that through maps, it is clearly understandable. And again, we can raise the mass awareness or community awareness through this kind of maps, because if there are some illiterate persons, so if you just tell them that see, these regions are much more prone to hazard, they will not understand. But if you just let them visualize, see, these areas are much more affected, so that will help them to understand better, right? So these are the main aims of hazard mapping. So now the thing is how to map. So once we know, okay, map is necessity, but then if you can't create a map, if you know the way how to make a map, then it's of no use. So now we're coming to how to draw a map or how to prepare a map. So first thing what is needed, that is planning. Without planning, you can't go anywhere. So what to plan? The first thing to plan, what hazard you're gonna draw. Okay, for which time you're gonna draw. So what are the parameter we'll take? So this thing comes under planning. Okay. The next thing is selection of place. I told you, because a hazard map is a uh, place oriented map. So you have to be very accurate while remarking the place. Okay. Next is marking. That means what important thing you want to show in your map. That is very important. While you are drawing an earthquake map, sometimes what we do, we mark only the epicenter, but that's not enough. Sometimes what we do, we start with marking the epicenter with magnitude, with affected areas. So so this is important. What you're gonna mark in your map, that that will decide how much impact your map gonna. Okay. Next, obviously, the identification of risk and vulnerability. I told you earlier, without identifying the risk and vulnerability, you couldn't assess the impact of hazards. So again, in case of mapping, also these things are very important. Next is data collection. So while you are drawing or you are mapping anything, you need some basic information. You need some ground sources, like sometimes you need some base map while you are drawing. Suppose you are drawing a flood map, but before drawing a flood map, you need a boundary, maybe a cadastral map from where you will get the boundary. Then you need some topographic information that you can get from the topo sheet. So those base maps are needed. Okay. After that, what you need rainfall data for maybe 10 years or 20 years, that you can get from IMD, that is Indian Meteorological Department. There are so many sources, both government, non-government sources, from where you can get the data. Okay. Sometimes you can get the data from some researchers who have done similar work on that particular region. You can follow them. You can do the literature review, and you can get the data. Right. The next technique, the next very important thing is efficiency. That is the mapper's efficiency. So if you can't, if you are not efficient, if you're not efficient enough to know all these things, how to, if you don't know how to draw isosurvey, you can't create a map. So this efficiency is very much, or how to interpret the data. You are having a maximum average annual rainfall data. So how to get maximum intensity rainfall or a like storm rainfall event, how to identify the storm rainfall event. If you don't know those things, then you couldn't draw a map. So efficiency is very much important. Next is survey and field monitoring. This is again very much important because there are so many things, so many hazards which you can't get through data, through published data, like landslide. Okay. Yeah, there are some inventory maps, there are some inventory data, but what is happening now? The current thing you couldn't get from any published resources. So you have to go to field only, and you have to go for field survey whether this what kind of rock material are there, what kind of geological formation is there, whether there is any fold or not, see how much rainfall is getting infiltrated through that rocks. So all these things you can only get from field observation, right? So that field investigation is very much needed. After that, you need some technical knowledge like community knowledge, uh, because sometimes what happen, you are drawing a rainfall map, right? And you are having 50 years rainfall data. So you are experiencing in this 50 years rainfall data, there is no a big event, big flood event. So you can say, oh, see, in 50 years rainfall, there is no such flood. There are very mild flood or no flood. So this region is safe. You are assessing or you are forecasting that this region is safe. But if you go to that place and ask older people, see, have you experienced any flood? They might tell you, during my father's time there was a huge flood, so that water comes up to 2 man's height. So they will how to say, explain these things. Then you might understand there are chances of flood which was not visible in data. So these community knowledge is very much important. Again, survey of historic events. Sometimes what we do, we go for literature survey. Like we have epic, we have folk tales, we have folklores. Maybe there are no events are recorded, but in folk tales, like I don't know, you have heard about Thakumar Jhuli, Rupkatha. Those things actually represent our past history. Okay, there are so many papers, so many research which is going on. They are identifying many hazards through those epic folk tales, folklores, and all. Okay, so these are also very very much important. Next is scientific investigation. Obviously, this is important. And the last technical thing that is very much important is GIS and remote sensing knowledge. Because nowadays, every maps which we are drawing, we don't create it manually. We made it through GIS platform. Okay, so if you don't have this GIS and remote sensing skill, it will not help because nowadays we use satellite image, we use aerial image, and accordingly we got more accurate result, more prompt result. In case of even in cyclone weather forecasting, we go with all the thermal image of the satellites, and we assess those things very quickly and got the accurate result. So without GIS, without remote sensing, we can't do that. So these are very much important. Finally, plotting and disclosing. That means you have to distribute the hazard map to all the government, non-government, and to the public, just to avoid these things. Okay. Now, up to that, I am talking about about theoretical parts of this disaster mapping and all. Let me show you some practical aspects. Okay. So we know we can draw a hazard map, but again, while we are drawing a hazard map, you have to be very choosy what you gonna draw, because even in case of hazard map, there are different aspects. So what you are drawing, that is very important, and based on that, you will assess the impact of hazards, right? So these types is very important, where you can show your particular intention through maps, right? So let me show you what kind of categories are there. So initially there are some general categories. The first category you can consider as quantitative mapping. This is one of the oldest types of mapping. Okay, where you can basically quantify the amount. Okay, if you see this map here at the right side, you can see there are two things is marked through matrix. One is consequences and one is likelihood. Okay, and what they have did, they create a simple matrix where it gonna extreme, where it gonna moderate, where it's gonna low by only quantifying the value, just by multiplying these two values by if it's negligible one and if it's possible 3 into 1 it's got 3 it's low, so they have just quantified the amount. And this kind of map you'll get during our ancient period, like if you go to Egypt and if you go some historic map of flood, you will see throughout the Nile river there are so many places where the flood number of flood events are been demarcated. So along this road, you will get five, you will get seven, you will get six, all the numbers. So these are actually flat quantity mapping of Egypt. Okay, so that quantification was there during the ancient time. But again, I can show you another example. So this is a earthquake map, and you can see all the all the earthquake center are been demarcated here. So this is simply a quantitative map. Okay, so it will help you to understand, okay, this region is having so many earthquakes. Maybe the southern India is having less earthquake. Okay, but if you see here, there is a problem. Although there are numbers are mentioned here, you can see, but all are of similar dots, of similar dimension and similar weight. But we know even in India, there might be number of earthquakes are less, but we have a high intensity earthquake. Uh, Not a one. We have so many high intensity earthquake. So if a region is having many earthquakes of low magnitude, that won't harm much. But if a region is having single earthquake with maybe with a magnitude of 7 or 8, that will damage more, right? So from these quantitative map, you couldn't understand the impact because you couldn't see how the magnitude of earthquake here, or you can only see the event. So this is you can say a drawback of quantitative mapping. And from that point of view, I am coming to the next type of mapping, that is qualitative mapping. And what is that? As I told you earlier, here you can see dots with varying size, right? So here what we are demarking, we are demarking all the epicenter along with their magnitude, whether its magnitude is more than 6 or below 6 or more than 8, in such a way. So now we can understand which areas are having more earthquake with high intensity, because if you are having an earthquake with low intensity, that will not damage more, so that is not to worry. Okay, so this is the thing, this is the importance of mapping, and this is the important to identify the aspects which you are showing in your map. Okay, the third category of mapping, we call it deterministic mapping. Okay, this is also a conventional way of mapping. Suppose someone asks you to prepare a earthquake zonation map for India. So while you are creating that zonation, you have to think what a parameter you will take in mind, right? Because if you only draw the earthquake center, this is not all. This is not all to draw a zonation map. Okay, what else you needed? Because maybe there is no earthquake in central India, but as there is this Himalayan zone is going passing through, and there is main central thrust located over there. So this area is very prone to earthquake, although there is no such earthquake recorded in history. So these things are very important. So along with the past events, you have to draw the lithological structure of this region. You have to keep in mind the tectonic background of the region, right? So when you are taking all these important parameters together, together, then it will call deterministic mapping. Here you can see you have taken all the initial parameters, but you haven't seen any anthropogenic parameters here because anthropogenic parameters are highly variable. Okay, even you have might have about the Uttarkashi earthquake, and that was occurred just due to the construction of dam over there. So that was purely anthropogenic, right? So here we haven't incorporated the anthropogenic factors because that was highly variable. That is possibilistic. So if you are drawing a deterministic thing, so you will consider those aspects which are actually permanent and predominant. Okay, so if you draw some map on based on some predominant factors, then we consider this map as deterministic mapping. Understood? Next, we are going to the next type of hazard mapping, that is called probabilistic mapping. So, what is probabilistic mapping? So, when along with deterministic approach, you are adding the possibilities. What what thing affect these regions in future? Suppose if you see this map, this is a flat map showing inundation of 100 years. So how we have drawn this thing? This event doesn't occur, right? So this is a future 100-year maps. So how we have done? We have taken all the deterministic thing along with some possibilistic theory. What possibilistic theories are there? So what we have taken? So the maximum water level maybe it occur up to 5 meter from the water level, from the mean sea level. So what we have done, we have taken up to, if it's raised up to 5 meter, we have taken the maximum historic flood events, and during that we found that the water level goes up to 5 meter. So we are considering if it goes up to 5 meter, then how much area will get inundated. We mark by the red color, right? Then what we do, we plan for some more. We thought maybe there might be more impactful hazard when the flood water will go up to 7 meter. So if it's go up to 7 meter, so how much area will get inundated? So we mark them through yellow color, and we go some more further, and we go up to 10 meter level of height. Okay, and what we found, if it's go up to 10 meter level maximum, then how much area will get inundated, that we have marked through blue color. So this is called probabilistic mapping. That means that disaster doesn't occur yet, but we are creating the maximum possibility of getting inundation, okay, or getting affected by the hazards. So that is called probabilistic mapping. Next is global, regional, and administrative mapping. I didn't make any example here because these are simply the boundary map. So based on your need, so maybe you are asking for a small area disaster impact. So you should draw a regional map. If you are asking for the whole world map, so based on basically your need, when you are demarcating your area according your size, then we call it by different name. Okay, and sometimes we need some administrative map, like administrative flood map for West Medinipore. So if when we draw the disaster map based on some administrative boundary, we call it administrative mapping. So I didn't give any examples here. Now I'm coming to the risk mapping. This is very important. So here, this map is being prepared by Helix. This is an international organization, and what they did, they have prepared this map based. I don't know whether writing is visible or not. They have prepared this map based on two aspects, that is medical facilities and security, so cyber security and medical facility. Based on that, they have taken several parameters. What kind of parameters? In case of medical facility, what are the life expectancy, what is the infant mortality rate, what is the standard of living, what is the availability of medicine, all these they have taken into consideration. And in case of security, they have taken how many administrative how many security agencies are there, how prompt they react. Okay, what are their comfort level of or how much time, how much duration they take while chasing a case or solving a case. Based on those parameters, they have created this risk map. And if we see here, particularly the Middle East country and the African countries are showing high risk zone in case of health and security. Because we all know that maybe they don't, particularly those Arabian countries, they have high security, but they have low health issues. That's why they shows as dark color, right? And in case of African regions, they are actually very poor countries, so they have very less medical facilities. They have very high infant mortality rate, and they also have uh, high number of crimes. That's why they comes under high risk zone. Okay, I don't know whether this risk map is understandable or not. So let me show you another example. So this is from my study area. Okay, this is the current area where I'm working on. So this region is located between Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. This is a river basin, and this river is known as Nagavali. Okay, this is Nagavali River basin, and this is a interstate river between Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. Okay, and I have started my research from that S1 point. You might have seen it. I think you can see that. So this region is known as Hatipahar region. Okay, so there was a waterfall, and government of India had proposed one hydel power project over there. Okay, so my research was started initiated from that point. Then I have extended my research up to H2 point, where currently there is a regulator which is known as Thotapalli regulator. Okay, so this is my study area. So let me show you what risk was there, or what happened over there. So if you see the left side image, you can see again here also you can see this is a 2005 Google image where the waterfall was clearly visible, right? And if you want to see the condition of the waterfall during that period, you should see this video. As you can see that during that time, the river was having very high discharge over this region. So government of India had proposed one hydel power project over there, and for their construction purpose, they started construction on 2006, and for their construction purpose, they dug a very narrow canal which is marked by this black line here. I think it is visible to you. This black line was the canal which was dug for the construction purpose. Unfortunately, on the same year, particularly on 3rd July, there was a rapid downpour for 3 continuous days, and this was a 30 days, 30 years record rainfall that occurred within that 3 days. Okay, and during that time, the river had initiated a new course through that canal, leaving its earlier course abandoned. So, if you see this video here, you can see during 3rd July, still some water is going through the old course, and here you can see the river is initiating its new course through the canal. And see within few hours how aggravated the course is, and you can see within 2 days how much changes it occurred. Okay, and finally, when we have visited this field, we found that after this single event, the river had shifted westward for a distance of 550 meters. Okay, and if you see this place, I don't know whether this feature you can remember from the first video or not. This is the earlier course. You can see it's completely abandoned now. It's completely dried now, and you can see this is the current course, and that current course is located a few meter down of the main course, and you can see still the remaining of the main course is remain as a hanging valley over the current course. Okay, and if you see this image, you can see there are some settlement over there, and this is a part of the settlement which is actually comes from a town, and this is actually the city, sorry, district town of Rayagada. So this Rayagada town is located here only. Okay. So from that point, we started our research. So if a single event can create that much shifting, so maybe in future this town will be in great danger. So we were trying to find out how much risk was there for the town, and accordingly we start researching. I'm not going in details, I'm just showing you a brief. So for doing the risk assessment, we assess the rainfall of this region, we have assessed the topographic factors, we have assessed dam, and then we created some micro topography of this region. Then we have also analyzed the soil map, because that helps us to understand how much vulnerable this region is. Next, we have also prepared the land use land cover map, because we know that deforested part are more vulnerable than the forested regions. We have also done a sedimentary analysis, because although apparently within 50 years data that 2006 was the single high recorded event, but we were trying to find out what was there in ancient time. And what we found there are deposition of big boulders within the sediments, and that can only be occur during high flood. So we got evidence of high floods in the past. So based on all these things, we have marked the most damage or vulnerable zones, vulnerable point of the region, and this is a 3D map of the region. And if you see this red was the town extension of the town over Raigada district town over the region, and based on the markings that we have marked all the vulnerable points, and based on the marking, when we connect all the points, we found a clear line, and we can easily say that the population beyond the line are at high risk. Okay, so this is a type of risk assessment map. I think you have now understand how we can create a risk assessment map, right? Next, we are coming next type of mapping, that's inventory mapping. Here, what we do, this is a type of current map where we only draw the extension of a particular hazard, okay, and its current condition, like a landslide. We know once a landslide occurred, it can continue for several years. Okay, maybe for 1 year it starts sliding, then for 4 or 5 years it remains static. Again, it start resliding. So that's happen. So that thing, when we mark that, then it's called inventory mapping. Here you can see that there are so many areas where we draw dormant. But that means those landslide was occurred in past, but now they are stabilized. And then we have also draw some active landslides. We also draw some new landslides. So this kind of map doesn't help to understand to mitigate the hazard, but help in construction. So while you are constructing any road or any such big infrastructure, or any such big things like barrier dams, or like bridge, so you have to go through this inventory map. How many active landslides are there? If a region is having more active landslides, so you shouldn't construct a road or a bridge over this region, right? So this kind of thing can help you can get help from the inventory mapping. So what I was telling you, all those are actually conventional way of mapping. But recently there are some new trend of hazard mapping, and among them there are first one is dynamic hazard mapping. So that you have already known, you know this thing. This you have seen the cyclone map, right? We now Earlier what we can see, those are static map. You can see only though this area got affected. This is high intensity. This is low intensity, right? But now what you can see, during the onset of that cyclone, you can see. the path where it's gonna be. Maybe after 2 days, where it's gonna be. After 3 days, where it's gonna be. So that we can draw now. So that is called dynamic map. Okay, so that means it shows the changes over time, right? And nowadays we again there are some modification in dynamic map, and that we call stimulation modeling. So this is an example of stimulation modeling that you used to see in videos in newspaper, right? So now we forecast the cyclone in that way, in video format. So this is called simulation modeling. We overlap all the static map and we create such videos. So you can see each hour after how the cyclone is moving, how the impact is there, how it's gonna be rain. So all these things can be easily understandable from this video or this simulation modeling, right? Next, sorry, the next type of mapping is hazard mapping, multiple hazard mapping. So after that we are talking about single hazards, right? Either it's earthquake or it's landslide or it's flood. So we are talking about single hazards. But we know that in India we have different multiple types of hazards that occur in a single place. Like in Odisha, in Andhra Pradesh, we suffer from cyclone, we suffer from flooding, we suffer from uh, so many things. Okay, so this so if we draw a single hazard, we couldn't show the risk, we couldn't show the impact of damage over this region. So for that, nowadays we are planning for, or we are creating some multiple hazard snaps. So here you can see uh, this EQ means earthquake. Again, the W and C means wind and cyclone. Okay, what else? This F for flood, FL for flood. Okay, so here you can see ED for a heavy downpour. So three or four types of hazards are mentioned along with their level of impact. That means cyclone with high risk of damage, cyclone with moderate risk of damage, cyclone with low risk of damage. So what we do first, we create individual maps and then we overlap them to finally get the multiple hazard generation map. So that will help you to understand the overall damage, because if you just assess one map, one hazard, so you won't get the exact damage that occur due to other hazards, right? So that's for this multiple hazard mapping is very much important. Okay, the next type of mapping is hazard susceptibility mapping. So again, this is a kind of assessment. That means if there is, even if there is no earthquake, even if there is no hazards, such hazards, but if it happen in future, so how much damage, how much risk is it gonna propose? So that we are trying to analyze. So what we do, so in case of hazard susceptibility, let me show you, like a particular region is experiencing four or five types of hazards. So how we will draw, I show you earlier, like in case of earthquake, we will take geological thing, we'll take tectonic evidence, tectonic factors of this region, we'll take the past events of earthquake, and we'll draw the administrative map, right? So if you draw individual deterministic map for individual hazard, like an earthquake, you have drawn this, where you are showing which zones are having negligible risk, which zone are having high risk, in that way. So this is for earthquake. Again, if you draw another map of landslide of same value, again, if you draw another map of flood, if you draw another map of storm, if you draw another map of drought. So there are five maps, and if you overlap all the map all together, so there are five maps you have drawn, and now this you are saying this region are experiencing these five hazards. So what you can do, based on the occurrence or based on the intensity, you can give some weightage. Like, so this region is having high risk of flood. Suppose I'm saying, sorry. So this Haiti region is having high risk of flood. So I'm giving flood even to a weightage of 30%. So flood is the maximum thing that occur here. So flood I'm giving 30% weightage. Then what else? This region also suffer from wind damage. So wind damage I am giving or storm. I'm giving 25% weightage. In case of drought, I am giving 25% weightage. This region is not prone to landslide, not much prone. Only few infrequent landslide can be seen. So this is not such much susceptible. So I'm giving 5% weightage to landslides, and the rest and the remaining 15% I am giving to earthquake. So based on, so there are five disaster. I am giving some weightage depending on their impact. Then among the 100%, I am calculating this thing. So most I have given to flood, then storm and drought, then earthquake, and very less amount I have given to landslide. Now, based on these values, I am recomputing the map to get the final susceptibility map. So this is the final susceptibility map where you can see the red dots are showing high risk from any kind of hazards. Either it can be earthquake, or either it can be flood. In case of all hazards, these regions are very much risky, where the green zones are less risk areas. So these kind of map are considered as hazard susceptibility mapping. So, I am giving another example from my study area. This is one of my research which I have done during my PhD. So let me show you a brief of that. So what I did, I have created a bank erosion vulnerability zonation. Okay, so how much a bank is prone to erosion, I have assessed that thing through GIS environment. Okay, I didn't go through field, or yes, I have visited the field for verification, but those mapping and all these things I have done through remote sensing and GIS. So you can see this is a river known as Howrah River, and this river is located in West Tripura. Okay, so this is the river. You can see this is a river, and here those 30 uh, the 30 lines are showing the area where I have visited, and I have verified the data. So I'm not going in details. So what I did for creating bank erosion vulnerability zonation, I have taken a few parameters which are actually affecting the bank erosion. The first factor which can affect a bank erosion, that is slope of the bank. Okay, because if the bank slope is high, or if it's a cliff slope, so there is high chances of erosion. And if it's a very gentle slope, we all know there are chances of erosion is less. So what I did, I have measured the horizontal distance between bank and the river bed, and also the vertical distance. That vertical distance can be measured from DAME or topographic sheet, or sometimes we just calculate it visually, right? And by dividing that vertical distance by horizontal distance, we got we will get some angle. So you can see I have reclassified this angle here, which are very gentle, what is steep, which is very steep, and what is cliff. So based on that, I give uh, six classifications. Okay, so for all the zonation, for all the parameters, I have restricted our my classification into six number of classes. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is about bank erosion. Sorry, this is about slope of the bank. Then we consider the meander index. So what is that? That is the curvature of a river bank. So we sometimes we see there are oxbow lakes, there are high meanders. Sometimes we can see the river is running straight. So that is the nature of river. But if it's a meander, that means this kind of curve. So these are much prone to erosion, because river, when there is a high water flow, so that got hit along the wall, along the concave wall of the meander, and this region got eroded rapidly. So how we have measured the meander index? We simply divide the entire river into small portions, and based on this small portion, what we have done, we have measured the length of the meander, and we have measured the horizontal distance between these two necks, and simply we have divided the value, and what we got, the value we have reclassified those value again in six classes. See, I'm sorry. Yes, we have categorized them in six classes. Although these are, you can see these are actually qualitative class, but we can consider them as one, two, three, four, five, six. The third thing we did is longitudinal gradient. That means the slope of the river bed. So that also we do by taking some small sections and taking the topographical height of between 2 points and the horizontal distance between 2 points. Again, we have classified this thing. I'm not going in details. The fourth one is soil erosivity. So what I did, we taken the soil taxonomy map of this region, and based on the soil texture, soil permeability, and soil organic matter, we generate the soil erosivity map. Then we reclassified that in again in six classes. And next is vegetative cover. We all know that if there is a high vegetation, there is a low chance of erosion. So again, through visual interpretation of satellite image and aerial images, we have make the percentage coverage of the region, how much percentage vegetation was there, and again we classified them in six categories. The final thing which we have added here, that is anthropogenic impact. That makes our map separate from the deterministic mapping, because here we have taken the possibilistic approach as well. So what we have done, we have done a pilot survey throughout the entire stretch of the river, and we try to find out what kind of anthropogenic activities are going on. So along this river, we found big fields, we found sand quarrying, we found bridge pyre on the road, sorry, bridge pyres within the river bed. We found quarrying of tila. We found construction of road through the river bed. So this kind of anthropogenic activity we have found, and what we have seen, we try to demarcate its affected area, how much area is getting affected by any such particular anthropogenic activity. So we have measured these things, and based on the impact area, we created some buffer zone. And based on this overlapping buffer, we reclassified the high risk. Sorry, we reclassified the impacted zone on six categories. Okay. So if you have seen, there are six parameters where we have categorized them in six categories. After that, we overlap all these six categories will with equal weightage. We give them equal weightage. We didn't go for any individual, like which one is more important, which is not. Is need. We go for equal importance, and based on that, we have prepared this map. This is bank erosion vulnerability map. We have superimposed all the six parameters here, and we have given equal weightage, and we got this map. And where we got the very high bank erosion maps, we have visited the field and we have verified the data with field estimated data, and we found this model of 92% of validity. So this is the way how to assess the hazard susceptibility mapping. The final or last thing which I'm gonna tell you, that's the evacuation mapping. So this is a very new map, this new model of mapping, and this is not still in practice in India, because you will go to any abroad, they are using this, but still in India we don't have this kind of map. So what they are doing, this is actually more accurate map. This should be incorporated in India, because what I told you during Amphan, they have demarcated the region as a whole, and they have given relief and grant to everyone. So that is of no need, right? We should demarcate those people who are actually affected, who got damaged, right? So you can see this is our evacuation mapping. So what they did, they have they have classified these area in different zones. If you see the red zone, these are the people who are at the verge of high danger. If a storm occur, if a tsunami occur, that will hit this red zone immediately. So they have marked these areas, and what they say, if a hazard occurred, so these red zone are the first who need to evacuate. So when they start evacuate, so they should follow this route. So see, after every red zone, they have demarcated a route through which they should evacuate. They should evacuate towards the storm shelter or the permanent shelter which been allotted to them. Okay, so first the red zone should evacuate. If the degree of hazard is much more higher, maybe initially we know a cyclone is having a speed of suppose 150 kilometers. So then maybe during 2 days prior to the cyclone, we're considering no, it's gonna be more severe hazards. The gale speed might be 200 kilometers. Then what will say the zone B, that is marked by the orange color, they should evacuate because this is becoming an extremely severe storm, and due to that we need some further evacuation. So the zone should evacuate then only. Okay, maybe during the hazard, we are considering, see, although the hazard is over, although the cyclone is over, but there can be a storm surges, there can be a heavy waves, heavy coastal waves. So during that time, maybe the zone C should evacuate because due to coastal waves, they can get affected. So they will evacuate then, and they will follow the route. So this is more appropriate map. This is more practical map, which will not only reduce the damage but also reduce the costing of disaster management. Right. So this is all. This is all about our mapping and disaster management techniques. So do you have any question, friends?